Hello there, and a very warm welcome to you. Seriously, please take a moment right now to just settle in, get comfortable wherever you're sitting, maybe grab a warm cup of tea, and just take a nice, deep, relaxing breath with me. We're going to spend some time together today, and what we are going to talk about is, well, it's truly and profoundly empowering. If you are in your 50s, your 60s, your 70s, or beyond, you might occasionally catch yourself feeling like your health is simply at the mercy of the calendar. We've all been there, haven't we? Feeling like aging is just this passive, inevitable process that we simply have to accept and endure. But I am here to tell you today with absolute scientific certainty that your cellular health is remarkably, beautifully in your own hands. Today we're exploring a deeply uplifting explainer. It's based on the incredible, genuinely life-changing work of Dr. Alan Mandel. Now, Dr. Mandel has spent 27 years, think about that, nearly 3 decades, working as an oncologist and a cancer prevention researcher. He has spent his entire professional life studying one fundamental question. Exactly why do some people develop cancer later in life, while others simply do not? What is the difference? And what his decades of meticulous, patient research have revealed is a very gentle, very reassuring promise. Your body's cells are constantly, always listening to the choices you make every single day. And here is the best part. The single most powerful cancer prevention tool available to you right now costs absolutely nothing. $0. It requires no prescription from a doctor, there are no confusing visits to the pharmacy, and honestly, it is something you can begin doing today, before we even finish our time together here. Okay, let's dive right into this. And I want to start by looking at a number that really should give every single one of us watching today a tremendous sense of hope and absolute capability. 61%. In 2022, researchers at the incredibly prestigious Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health published what we call a landmark study in the journal JAMA Oncology. Now, I want to be clear, this was not some small short-term experiment with a handful of people. They tracked an astonishing 135,000 adults. And they didn't just watch them for a few months, they followed these folks across 2 entire decades. 20 years of watching how these people lived, the everyday choices they made, and exactly how their older bodies responded. And what they found was, quite frankly, absolutely staggering. They discovered that people who consistently practiced a specific cluster of completely free, everyday lifestyle habits, while those people reduced their overall cancer risk by up to 61% compared to the folks who didn't practice those habits. I really want you to just let that sink in for a moment. Take your time with that number. 61% is not just a little marginal improvement. It's not a slight lucky edge. For hundreds of thousands of people, that 61% is the literal difference between receiving a devastating cancer diagnosis and walking out of their doctor's office with a wonderful, clean bill of health. This massive study conclusively proves that our risk is absolutely not a sealed fate. We have an incredible amount of agency over our biology, and please hear me when I say this, it is never, ever too late to start applying it.
So you are probably wondering, how exactly do we achieve that kind of protection? Well, we are going to walk through a calming, step-by-step roadmap of the 5 most powerful cellular protection habits available to adults over 50. We'll look at Habit 5, Stop Cellular Rust. Habit 4, Your Nightly Security Force. Habit 3, Signal Cells to Stop. Habit 2, Calm the Biology. And finally, Habit 1, the Master Cleanup Switch.
Let's begin our countdown right now with habit number 5, stop cellular rust.
Now, before we look at the exact biology of this very first habit, I want to reassure you right out of the gate. You do not need to feel overwhelmed by any of this. We're going to take our time today nice and slow. These are completely free, incredibly accessible habits that gently build upon one another. You do not need to change your entire life overnight. So let's just pull up a chair to the kitchen table, so to speak. This first habit involves our diet. Specifically, it's about eliminating ultra-processed foods. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds like simple advice we have all heard a million times before, right? Eat better. But this actually operates through a fascinating, specific biological mechanism that most people have never had properly explained to them by their doctors. To truly understand why this matters so much for us as we get older, we need to look at a brilliant little mechanism inside your body called DNA mismatch repair. I want you to think of this like a diligent, hardworking little proofreader sitting quietly inside your cells. You see, every single cell in your body is constantly replicating, dividing, and replacing itself. It's happening right now as we speak. In a healthy body, the cellular proofreader catches tiny little typing errors in your genetic code, and it fixes them before they can become dangerous mutations, and long before those mutations could ever grow into tumors. But here is the critical, natural shift that happens to all of us. After we hit age 50 or so, as decades of natural cellular wear and tear begin to accumulate, the efficiency of your proofreader naturally declines by roughly 30.
Actually, to be precise, between 30 and 40%. Your body naturally becomes a little less reliable at catching those errors, right at the exact time in your life when it needs to be the most vigilant. This is exactly where ultra-processed foods become so incredibly dangerous for us. We're talking about foods like those packaged snacks in the pantry, fast food, processed deli meats, and sugar-sweetened beverages. These foods quite literally flood your vulnerable cells with highly inflammatory compounds called advanced glycation end products. We call them AGEs for short. And what these AGEs do is they actively break and impair your proofreading machinery. It's like spilling sticky soda all over the proofreader's desk. A massive 2023 study out of Imperial College London followed 197,000 adults. They found that those eating the most ultra-processed foods had a 32% higher risk of colorectal cancer and a 19% higher risk of breast cancer. Furthermore, researchers at the National Cancer Institute confirmed that eating these foods independently increases your overall cancer mortality by 28%. And here's the kicker. That 28% increase happens even if you are at a healthy weight, even if you don't smoke, and even if you exercise regularly. The food itself is literally rusting the machinery from the inside out.
Let me bring this to life for you by telling you a story about a highly relatable patient named Sandra. Sandra was 58 years old, she worked as a busy office administrator, and she originally came into Dr. Mandel's clinic because her older sister had recently been diagnosed with colon cancer. Sandra was, understandably, very worried. Now, Sandra's diet was what she considered totally typical, normal American food. And honestly, it probably sounds very, very familiar to many of us. She'd have a bowl of boxed cereal in the morning, a standard deli meat sandwich for lunch, and maybe some packaged crackers with processed cheese as a mid-afternoon snack to get through the workday. When the clinic ran Sandra's blood tests, the results revealed that her inflammatory markers, specifically something called C-reactive protein, or CRP, and interleukin-6, were both significantly elevated. These markers were essentially telling a story of hidden, silent cellular stress happening inside her body. But here's the beautiful part. Sandra didn't go on some crazy starvation diet. She wasn't asked to do anything extreme or miserable. She simply made concrete, gentle, whole food swaps. Over 12 months, she took it step by step. Her morning boxed cereal became a comforting bowl of warm oatmeal with fresh berries. Her packaged afternoon snack bar became a crisp, sweet apple with a handful of walnuts. Her processed deli meat at lunch became a simple piece of grilled chicken or a hard-boiled egg. Simple, right? But the results of these gentle, everyday swaps were absolutely astonishing. Without any other medical interventions or pills, Sandra's CRP levels dropped by an incredible 44%. Her interleukin-6 completely normalized back to healthy levels. And wonderfully, a follow-up colonoscopy showed a total reversal of the low-grade inflammation her doctor had previously flagged. Just replacing one ultra-processed item in each meal with a whole food equivalent can dramatically protect your cells and let your internal proofreader get back to doing its life-saving job.
Let's transition smoothly now into habit number 4, your nightly security force.
As we explore this fourth habit, I want to gently invite you to completely rethink how you view a good night's sleep. Most of us, especially as we get older, think about sleep purely in terms of just feeling rested, right? Or maybe just having enough energy to get through the chores the next day. But in the realm of oncology and real cancer prevention, sleep is not merely resting your eyes. It is a highly active, absolutely essential life-saving biological intervention, and it operates deeply and powerfully while you are dreaming. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that to understand the security force, we need to look at specialized cells in your body called natural killer cells, or NK cells for short. This introduces a profound concept called immunosurveillance. I want you to think of these NK cells as your body's elite internal security force. Their entire job, day in, day out, 24 hours a day, is to constantly patrol your bloodstream and your tissues. They are actively searching for, identifying, and destroying early-stage cancer cells before those cells can ever establish themselves and grow. But here is the absolutely vital connection that we so often miss. The activity, the aggressiveness, and the sheer strength of these natural killer cells are almost entirely regulated by your sleep cycles. Specifically, it is the deep, slow-wave sleep. These are stages 3 and 4 of non-REM sleep that happen mostly early in the night. That deep sleep triggers your body to release a cascade of powerful proteins called cytokines. These cytokines are exactly what directly amplify, arm, and activate your security force. The challenge we face as we age, however, is that after age 60, the amount of deep, slow-wave sleep our bodies naturally generate drops by about 50%, half. This means if you aren't actively consciously protecting your sleep habits, your body's cancer surveillance system is essentially running at half capacity.
The consequences of ignoring this fundamental biological need are really profound. We need to look at this data with clear eyes, but also with deep empathy for our aging bodies, because sleep can be tough as we get older. A 2019 study from the University of Chicago showed something amazing and frankly a bit scary. If a healthy adult sleeps fewer than 6 hours a night for just one single week, Just 7 days of poor sleep, their natural killer cell activity plummets by a terrifying 70%. Your internal security force is essentially disarmed just from one bad week. And over the long term, the numbers are even clearer. The International Agency for Research on Cancer reviewed data from over 2 million participants. 2 million. And they found that chronic short sleep, which means consistently getting under 6 hours a night, is associated with devastating risks for adults over 55. It leads to a 40% increased risk of breast cancer, a 36% increased risk of prostate cancer, and a staggering 55% increased risk of colorectal cancer. Chronic short sleep is simply too costly a habit for our cellular health to endure. We have to prioritize it.
But please do not worry, because here is the truly wonderful, uplifting news. You have the power to fix this, starting tonight, just like Robert did. Robert was a 63-year-old retired engineer. Now, for decades during his career, Robert prided himself on being one of those guys who could just tough it out. He functioned on just 5 to 6 hours of sleep a night. He wasn't obese, he didn't smoke, he exercised fairly regularly, but he came to the clinic feeling deeply concerned after his doctor found a precancerous polyp during a routine checkup. His sleep, like so many of ours, was fractured, shallow, and much too short. So, under guidance, he implemented what sleep researchers call an anchor protocol. This consisted of 4 very simple, highly effective steps that cost absolutely nothing. First, he established a consistent 10:30 p.m. bedtime. Every night, no exceptions. Second, he committed to turning off all his devices, his phone, his iPad, and the television to ensure complete darkness and quiet after 9 p.m., letting his brain wind down. Third, he started keeping his bedroom comfortably cool at exactly 67 degrees Fahrenheit, which signals the body it's time to hibernate. And fourth, and really the most critical step of all, he maintained a strict anchor wake time every single morning, even on Saturdays and Sundays. Setting that morning alarm anchors your body's circadian rhythm far more powerfully than almost anything else you can do. After just 8 weeks of this completely free, highly disciplined but gentle routine, Robert's sleep naturally increased to a solid 7.5 hours a night. His sleep tracker proved that his deep sleep stages had literally doubled, and beautifully, wonderfully, his follow-up blood work showed his natural killer cell count had increased by an incredible 38%. He took back total control of his body's security force simply by honoring his basic biological need for rest.
We are now moving gently into habit number 3, signal cells to stop. Before we dive deeply into the biology of exactly how we send that stop signal to our cells, I want to take a moment to explicitly redefine a word. It's a word that carries a whole lot of heavy baggage for many of us, and that word is exercise. For so many adults over 50, the word exercise just sounds like a stressful obligation. It sounds like a physical burden or some exhausting, sweaty gym routine that we simply tune out because, frankly, it feels totally inaccessible for our joints and our energy levels. I want you to take that old definition of exercise and just throw it completely away. What we are talking about today is the deeply inviting, highly empowering, and much more manageable concept of purposeful daily movement. Let's look closely at exactly what purposeful movement does inside your body at a microscopic level. It all comes down to a very delicate dance between 2 biological factors, IGF-1 and P53. Let's start with IGF-1. This stands for insulin-like growth factor 1. It is a hormone that essentially acts as a cellular fertilizer. When we are young, teenagers, and growing, this fertilizer is absolutely great. We need it. But after age 50, if we sit in our recliners or at our desks for too long, our sedentary behavior causes this IGF-1 fertilizer to become chronically elevated. And unfortunately, that excess fertilizer accelerates the growth of cells, including hidden cancer cells. On the other hand, we have a vital protein called P53. This is your cell's most powerful, natural internal stop signal against malignant growth. It hits the brakes. Regular, moderate movement is scientifically proven to lower that dangerous fertilizer IGF-1 while simultaneously boosting your P53 stop signal. A massive 2020 study from the American Cancer Society tracked 186,000 adults over 10 whole years. They found that just engaging in moderate movement, not marathons, just movement, lowered the risk of developing colon cancer by 42%. It reduced breast cancer recurrence by 38%, and it lowered overall cancer mortality by 26%. Furthermore, brilliant research from the University of Queensland showed that simply breaking up prolonged sitting with short, easy 5-minute walks around the house every hour reduced tumor-promoting inflammation by 27%. You absolutely do not need to run a marathon or lift heavy weights to fundamentally change your biology for the better.
I really want to share the deeply inspiring story of a woman named Eleanor, just to show you exactly what this looks like in everyday practice. Eleanor was 71 years old when she came into the clinic. This was about 2 years after she had successfully finished treatment for stage 1 breast cancer.
Naturally, she was terrified of a recurrence. It was a fear that lived in the back of her mind every single day, a fear so many of us can deeply, deeply understand and empathize with. Now, Eleanor also suffered from pretty painful osteoarthritis in her knees and hips. She could not run, and she absolutely, definitely could not do traditional heavy gym workouts. So her doctors didn't push her. Instead, they built a very gentle, purposeful movement protocol around exactly what her specific body could comfortably handle. Her new routine consisted of 3 simple things. First, a gentle 20-minute brisk walk around her neighborhood after breakfast. Second, making a very deliberate point to just stand up and stretch her arms and legs while watching her favorite television shows in the evening. And third, taking brief 5-minute walk breaks around the house every hour while she sat reading her books in the afternoon. That was it. No heavy weights, no expensive trainers, no joint exhaustion, just consistent, gentle movement. But at her 12-month follow-up, her blood work was nothing short of astonishing. Eleanor had achieved a 23% drop in her IGF-1 levels. That's that dangerous cellular fertilizer we just talked about. Her oncologist noted significantly improved natural killer cell counts. And Eleanor herself described her daily energy, her mood, and her mental clarity as being completely, wonderfully transformed.
Now, if you want to start signaling your own cells to stop growing improperly today, here is the absolute most practical, most encouraging advice you will ever hear. And it is backed by brilliant 2021 research out of Stanford University. It is called the post-meal movement habit. Step 1. Simply eat your largest meal of the day, whether that's lunch or dinner. Step 2. Almost immediately after finishing, just step out your front door. Step 3. Take a comfortable, brisk 20-minute walk. That's it. Stanford researchers found that this specific timing, the act of walking right after a large meal, powerfully suppresses your post-meal blood sugar spikes or glucose spikes by up to 33%. Why does that matter? Because those sudden glucose spikes are exactly what independently fuel cancer cell metabolism. Cancer loves sugar. By just taking a pleasant walk around your neighborhood after dinner, looking at the trees and breathing the fresh air, you are actively starving any rogue cancer cells of their preferred fuel. You never ever need a gym membership. You never need to lift a heavy weight. You just need your own front door, a comfortable pair of shoes, and a loving, gentle commitment to yourself.
Let's just pause for a moment right here. Take another deep breath. And I want you to consider this deeply thought-provoking question. We all feel stress, but what if stress isn't just a fleeting feeling in your head? What if your emotional health isn't somehow separate from your physical health? What if your daily worries are actually sending direct physical signals that are actively changing your cellular biology at this very second?
This brings us quite naturally to habit number 2, calm the biology. Now, I know exactly what many of you might be assuming when you hear a phrase like calm the biology. The term stress management has been used so much that it can often sound like a very soft, vague wellness buzzword, right? It doesn't sound like a serious clinical medical intervention. But I promise you, we're going to look at the hard, undeniable, rock-solid oncology behind this. Dr. Mandel notes that after 27 years in clinical practice, chronic psychological stress is one of the absolute most dangerously under-discussed drivers of cancer in adults over 50. Let's slowly, carefully expand on the actual physical biology of stress. The key player here in your body is a molecule called cortisol. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone. Now, short-term bursts of cortisol are perfectly healthy. If you have to slam on your brakes in traffic, cortisol spikes to give you focus. It is your natural emergency response system. But when we carry persistent, chronic stress from things like financial anxiety, unresolved grief from losing loved ones, the deep ache of loneliness, or just endless daily worry about the news, our cortisol doesn't go back down. It remains chronically elevated, humming in the background all day and night. And when that happens, the biological consequences are incredibly severe. Chronic cortisol actively suppresses the expression of 2 genes called BRCA1 and BRCA2. These are your body's 2 most critical DNA damage repair genes. It also upregulates, or turns up the volume on, a highly inflammatory pathway called NF-kappa B. Let me put that in plain English for you. Chronic stress actively tells your body to keep damaged, potentially malignant cells alive and growing, rather than allowing them to naturally die off and be safely cleared out like they're supposed to. An alarming 2022 study from the Ohio State University Comprehensive Cancer Center showed that chronic stress reduced the activity of tumor-attacking immune cells by an incredible 48% in adults over 60. Take a moment to really process that. Nearly half your immune fighting power gone just from stress. And a massive 2023 analysis by the Karolinska Institute, looking at nearly 500,000 people, found that adults with elevated chronic stress had a 43% higher risk of blood cancers and a 31% higher risk of lung cancer. Stress is not just in your head, it is a deeply physical event that alters our very cells. Let's look at a deeply relatable story about a man named David to see how we can fight back against this. David was a 66-year-old, recently retired executive. On the outside, he felt like he was finally relaxing. He was playing some golf, sitting on his porch, but his blood work told a completely different story. It showed a state of profound allostatic load. Allostatic load is a clinical term for when your body is chronically imprinted with biological stress from decades of unresolved pressure and mild isolation. His cortisol rhythm was completely inverted, which happens to so many of us. It was terribly low in the morning when he actually needed energy to get out of bed, and it was peaking high at night when he desperately needed to rest. His essential DNA repair genes were suppressed. So, David adopted a completely free calm protocol. It cost him nothing. Every single morning, he sat in a comfortable chair and did just 12 minutes of slow 4-7-8 diaphragmatic breathing. That's breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 7, and exhaling for 8. In the evening, he took a quiet 15-minute walk. But the crucial part was he purposely left his smartphone at home to completely disconnect from the news and emails. And finally, to combat his creeping sense of isolation, he committed to hosting a simple weekly social dinner with his friends. Within just 6 months, David's cortisol rhythm had beautifully, perfectly normalized. His tumor-promoting NF-kappa B markers dropped by an amazing 31%. And his oncology team was absolutely thrilled to see dramatically improved, highly protective lymphocyte counts across the board. These incredibly simple, completely free actions profoundly rescued his immune system and gave him his health back.
And this brilliantly illustrates why we have finally arrived at habit number 1, the master cleanup switch. I can assure you, this single, powerful habit that we are about to discuss not only stands strongly on its own, but it actually amplifies the success of every single other habit we have talked about so far today. Let's take a full, expansive moment to understand a truly beautiful biological process. It's a word you might not have heard before: autophagy. Autophagy is, quite simply, your body's deepest, oldest, and most fundamental cancer prevention mechanism. It translates to self-eating, and it is essentially an internal cellular cleanup system. Think of it like a crew of janitors sweeping through your body. Here's how it works. When you give your digestive system a long enough break from processing food, your body shifts its energy. Instead of using energy to digest that late-night snack, it turns its attention completely inward. It aggressively sweeps through your tissues to clean out damaged cells, rogue proteins, and low-grade dysplasia before any of those things can ever turn into something dangerous. In his clinic, Dr. Mandel implemented a protocol centered entirely on activating this autophagy for a patient who was experiencing low-grade dysplasia in his colon. Within just 90 days of allowing his body the proper time to clean itself overnight, this patient's fasting glucose dropped from a risky 108 down to a very healthy 91. And within 12 months, his follow-up colonoscopy showed a complete and remarkable resolution of his dysplasia. The precancerous issue was simply gone. His measured autophagy biomarkers had jumped by a massive 53%. His body literally cleaned and healed itself from the very inside out, simply by being given the uninterrupted time to do so.
So how do we activate this miraculous cleanup system? You do it through something very simple called the 14-10 eating protocol. Now please listen to me carefully because I want to speak very reassuringly here. This is absolutely not about starving yourself, not at all. And it has absolutely nothing to do with tedious calorie counting or depriving yourself of the wonderful foods you love to eat. It is simply about telling your body when it is time to digest and when it is time to clean. You just establish a consistent 10-hour window for eating during the day. For example, if you have your first meal or even just your morning coffee with a splash of cream at 8 a.m., you then enjoy all your normal, healthy, wonderful meals throughout the day. And then you simply close the kitchen 10 hours later at 6 p.m. For the remaining 14 hours, and remember, most of those hours you are going to spend completely unaware and sleeping happily in your bed, you consume only water, plain black coffee, or unsweetened tea. That is it. You do nothing else, and your body's magnificent, ancient autophagy system wakes up and does all the heavy lifting, all the sweeping and cleaning, for you while you rest. It is utterly accessible, it is profoundly effective, and it is available to anyone watching this video right now.
So the crucial point I want to make as we bring all of this together is this. What we have explored today is not just a random collection of 5 different health tips. It is an integrated, beautifully compounding strategy of total cellular defense. This is what we call the synergy connection. It's like compound interest for your health. When you pull that master lever of time-restricted eating, that 14-10 protocol, it amplifies absolutely everything else we've discussed. Eliminating ultra-processed foods restores your DNA proofreading machinery so it can clearly catch genetic errors. Optimizing your sleep through a strict anchor protocol brings your natural killer security cells back up to full fighting strength. Purposeful daily movement, like taking that simple, pleasant walk out your front door after dinner, actively starves cancer cells by lowering that dangerous IGF-1 fertilizer. Calming your biology through simple, quiet breathing normalizes the toxic cortisol that otherwise keeps damaged cells alive. And the 14-10 eating protocol wraps all of this beautiful work together, activating that deep cellular cleanup every single night. Every single one of these habits makes the others stronger. They are a team, and they are working tirelessly to protect you.
As we finally come to the end of this explainer today, I want to leave you with these profound words directly from Dr. Mandel, and I truly want you to hear them with immense hope, with deep sincerity, and with an open heart. He says, your cells are not fixed, your risk is not sealed, every morning you wake up is another opportunity to shift the conditions inside your body. Please remember, the incredibly empowering science we've looked at today isn't based on 30-year-olds with perfect genetics or marathon runners. It is based entirely on people exactly like you and me. Adults in their 50s, their 60s, their 70s, and beyond, who made gentle, targeted, realistic changes and documented remarkable, life-saving improvements. It is never, ever too late to take back your agency and fiercely protect your health.
So I will leave you with this final, lingering thought to reflect upon as you go about the rest of your day. Look at the incredible, untapped power you hold over your own biology. Which of these 5 totally free, beautifully simple cellular protection habits will you start using today? Will it be replacing just one processed snack with a whole food like an apple? Taking a gentle 20-minute stroll after your dinner tonight? Or perhaps simply setting a firm morning wake time to anchor your sleep tomorrow morning? The choice is beautifully, wonderfully yours to make. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me, to sit with me, and to learn about your incredible, resilient body today. Stay empowered, trust in your ability to heal, and please take wonderful care of yourself.